Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to our last webinar of 2021. Isn't that like, where does the time go? I feel like we just started the school year and here we are ready for Halloween, almost time for Thanksgiving. If you've been to Target, you can already buy Christmas trees. So this is the best time of the year. I'm very excited. And this is the best webinar to wrap us up for this 2021. So I know that you're not here to listen to me. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest of the hour, Dr. Rosales. Dr. Rosales is the former executive director of the Miami-Dade County Public School Department of Science, the fourth largest system in the United States. She is a veteran educator and administrator with over 32 years of experience in science and STEM education, curriculum development, teaching and learning, educational leadership, and teacher professional development. Dr. Rosales believes in and remains committed to the national movement of system reform of STEM education. So please give your warmest welcome to Dr. Rosales.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I love that you are pushing in to the little emojis, and we're going to be using the chat box. So I hope that everyone will participate actively, especially since we're in this virtual world. From today's presentation. So if you could just type in the chat box, anything, a few words, couple words.
Again, please, your voice cut out.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you could push into the chat box your expectations of today's session, that would be great. And my handy facilitators will be assisting.
We have
learn more
a special guest today who is a 4-month-old of Adrienne Kaiser. So
nice.
Welcome. But we have some goals. One is to learn more on how to help my GT kids. Would like practical tips to tie project-based learning into my curriculum. We have to get new knowledge to support students. Learn how EduSmart resources to access directed towards my curriculum.
Fabulous. Now, what's GT? If I could have that explained, that's a new terminology to me.
It's gifted and talented.
Excellent. Gifted and talented. Fantastic. We have ESC, SPED, gifted, fantastic. So from 4 months up, we can do project-based learning. Alrighty, so I'm going to ask Devon, she's going to be driving my slides. So we're going to move to our goals for today's session. And I'm pretty sure that these goals also match your expectations, I hope. But we will have a Q&A at the end. And I would gladly take questions if we did not address your needs during the presentation. So hopefully we're going to provide an overview of project-based learning, demonstrate how to incorporate project-based instruction into your lesson planning to really meet the needs of all kids, the GT as well, and collaborate on resources for effective project-based instruction. So as we move forward, just to give you an idea, project-based learning promotes increasing that depth of understanding of content. It should not take away from your standards and your expectations for the year. The great thing about project-based learning is it also leverages time that's spent at home, because students will be working on understanding content through these projects while they are at home, and even occasionally involving their families. And it expects students to take a deeper dive into the world of science. So as we move on, we'll see that project-based learning is going to engage students actively long-term. Most importantly, project-based learning takes time. We know that it takes time, but it gives back instructional time because the students are going to be highly engaged and they're going to be learning and applying their science concepts. They will be incorporating 21st century skills, creativity, communication, collaboration, critical thinking, all the things that we want all students to be able to do. Also, they're solving problems that occur in the real world. These projects take time, as I mentioned before, they are long-term, and I can't emphasize that enough, that it may take a week, it could take a term, it could take a semester, it could even take an entire year like a capstone project would. But the students' end result is that they're going to be knowing their science content at the epitome of learning, where they can turn around and communicate their understanding to others. So let's take a look at a study that was done. And I got this article from NSTA, and it really was in the Hetchinger report. And its title is Project-Based Learning Boosts Student Engagement Understanding. So the author, Tara Matheson, she discusses how 46th graders at this Stony Brook school, they were going to try to figure out when and where the next earthquake will hit outside of the North America. So in order to do this, they had to research continental plates and convection currents. They had to use their mathematical skills and they graphed earthquake magnitudes. They also had to incorporate their ELA strategies, and they read about studies in China and Japan and Nepal. And they considered, how did people need to adapt in an earthquake-prone environment? They then turned around and they presented their case, not only verbally, but also in writing, for why they expected the earthquake to hit where they said it was going to hit. And they had to back up this hypothesis with well-sounded reasoning and argumentation based on evidence. That sounds a lot like our claims, evidence, reasoning, right? That is originally an ELA strategy, but we have adopted it in science. And it's so important for students when they're doing any activity, and this is the same with just a simple experimentation in the classroom, that they can make their claim, they can look at the data from what their experiment is showing them or what the research is showing, and tie it back into sound scientific reasoning. So in this particular case, 4 core subjects were integrated. They were co-taught by 2 teachers. I know this is something that is becoming a lot more commonplace for my elementary teachers who are self-contained. You teach all subjects. So this is not new to you. But in the middle school, former junior high school environment, there are discrete subjects. And so this co-teaching is becoming a little bit more popular. And it really is a great way for students to realize the interconnectedness of courses. Even if you're not co-teaching, you can always collaborate with your other discipline teachers to make student learning experiences that much more rich. So this is what the principal had to say. And I'll give you a few seconds as I read this aloud to just reflect on his words. So there is direct instruction that takes place, but the work is being driven by the students' passion and their ability to collaborate with each other. Their ability to articulate and communicate has been profound, and the families and the students are quick to reflect that. So I'm going to ask you to push in the chat, what are some of the words that stand out for you?
Student passions, passion. Student driven, passion, driven by students. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So we see that project-based learning, it works. And we know that if somebody is passionate about something, yes, collaboration, Denise, thank you. If they're passionate, they're going to want to dive deeper, articulate, yes, discuss it, and not just discuss it in a quasi manner. The students had to use the appropriate scientific terminology, so we know that they are understanding the science. So one of the things that can be a hook for students is science phenomena, right? Things that interest them. Students love things that are like, wow, and it really get their attention. So when we find science phenomena that are standards aligned, we want to know what are the questions that students may want answered. So a lot of times we can put questions up on the walls. We can have a specific section in our classroom where students can put on Post-it notes and tack up their questions about science phenomena. And then as the year goes on, they can have those questions answered. The same thing applies with project-based learning. So let's take a look at some really engaging science phenomena. Storms, right? New York went through Hurricane Ida. They're currently going through other storms right now. They're going through a big nor'easter. We have hurricanes that we know that have devastated across the country, from the Gulf up the Northeast coast. We have floods, tornadoes. You guys in Texas, you're very familiar with tornadoes. Hurricane Andrew that devastated and wiped out Homestead in 1992. That was because of the tornadoes that came in with the hurricanes. And we know that what a lot of these storms leave behind is a lot of flooding. And when the water is not coming down and, creating tremendous destruction and distress, we have drought, which is the opposite of all this deluge of water. And it's the extreme lack of water that also creates disastrous conditions for us. And most importantly, the impact on human life, as well as vegetation and other organisms. But the children can directly relate to the impact on their life. So the immediate impacts have long-term effects, and they can linger for generations. So through projects that will encourage students to reflect on natural phenomena in science, students start to think like scientists, and they question like scientists, and they do observations, and they collect data. So let's take a look at developing a lesson for project-based learning. So I'm going to give you just a sample that I used EduSmart actually. So I know that one of the expectations is, how to really leverage EduSmart in our classrooms. So for my project-based learning assignment, I created a lesson plan. So you'll see that this was put together in EduSmart. I included EduSmart content. I have an instruction module, actually 2 instruction modules, an interactivity, a word explorer, a journal. And then what I also did was I pulled in external resources, a few web links that you will see a little later, and an actual project-based lesson that I can either direct instruct from this lesson, as you're about to see in a few seconds, or I could assign portions of it to the student by simply modifying this simple playlist that I created that took just a couple minutes and a couple clicks. Okay, so let's take a look at our first instruction module on climate.
Have you ever wondered what makes these two places so different? It is the climate of the area. A place that doesn't get much rain over many years would have a dry climate. This place would be a desert. A place where it stays warm and humid for most of the year would have a tropical climate. this place would be a rainforest. How is climate different from weather?
Okay, I'm going to ask you to push in the chat box. How is climate different from weather? And these pauses are naturally occurring in the EduSmart instruction module, specifically for teachers to have direct instruction with the students. Don't see any chat coming in. Do you see any, Devanshi? Yearly, weather can be daily, year round. Melissa, I believe you might be referring to climate, or do we have weather year round? Climate is long-term weather conditions. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you, guys. Alrighty, and I'm going to have a couple more instances for you to interact with this instruction module. What's happening today? Very good. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Climate is short-term. So let's take a look, Heather. Oh, ooh.
Sorry, that's on me. Give me one. Oh.
There we go.
Have you ever wondered what makes it so different? It is the climate of the area. A place that doesn't get much rain over many years would have a dry climate. This place would be a desert. A place where it stays warm and humid for most of the year would have a tropical climate. This place would be a rainforest.
And it'll continue on its own, Devanshi. It'll continue on its own.
Climate different from weather?
Okay.
If it rains today, we are talking about the weather. If it rains every day in summer for several years, then we are talking of the climate. Climate describes the average weather of a place. How do we know what the climate of a place is? Meteorologists help us. They observe, collect, and record weather data every day over many years. They use this data to give us the climate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for pausing, Devanshi. So we had a snowpalacopolis in Texas. I am not familiar with that.
We had a huge snowstorm last mid-February that left a good part of Texas covered in snow, and a lot of big cities without electricity or water for days or weeks.
So that's a phenomenon that students probably were very curious about.
They
right?
were, they had all kinds of questions when we got back. And it did lead to a good discussion on climate versus weather, because they, you know, in their lives, I teach sixth graders, nothing like that had ever happened in Austin. Mm-hmm. So it was
excellent. So that would be a wonderful way for them to observe, collect, record, and then also look back in history to see, when did this ever happen? Previously, did it ever happen? Will it happen again in the future based on patterns or the data that they have collected? So excellent. Thank you for contributing.
– Would you like me to continue the video, Ava?
Yes, thanks.
Of a particular place. Let's look at the temperature data.
I'm sorry, the video is a bit jumpy. Pardon me.
Okay. Alrighty. So this was where we were going to have a poll for you to take. So we're looking at state A and state B, and we see all these various temperatures. And the question is, which one would have a higher, which one would be hotter? So a hotter climate. Would you say state A or state B? Okay, we see A's, we see a B, see more A's coming in. Okay, all righty, and we're gonna end the poll. Thank you, and the A's have it. Very good. And so of state A, now we know state A is a warmer climate because it has the higher temperatures over longer periods of time. And I'm going to ask you, if you're going to spend summer vacation, which month would you spend in state A? So we have another quick question for you. Would it be June, July, or August? Which month would be your ideal summer vacation month? And again, we kind of have pretty interesting. We have a lot of Junes, we have some July, and we actually have some August. So we're going to, more people coming in July. So it's a 50-50 split with June and July, and then August has just a couple people choosing that. We're going to end that poll and close out. So it depends, right? If you like it really hot and toasty, then you're probably going to go, right? You have no idea how hot that is in Fahrenheit. I hear you. But you do know that the numbers are higher. So it's going to be a lot hotter in July, and it's going to be coolest in June. So if you like to have just like a comfortable June, warm weather, you want to go in June. 34 might be a little hot, but again, it's all dependent on your preference. But this is a good discussion on Celsius and Fahrenheit. And I know that we use the international measurements in science. So you'll see the centigrade. Yes, thanks.
Which summer month would you recommend he spend there? It would be best that Sean spends June in State A, since it records the coolest temperatures of summer. Knowing about the climate is useful in helping us plan our activities. Though climate is a long-term measurement, it can change over the years. Earth's average temperature has slowly begun to increase, bringing about the famously used expression, global warming. How could global warming be dangerous? Even a few degrees of a rise could cause polar ice caps to melt and raise the ocean levels, and there is only one thing that a rising ocean can do. You just learned that climate describes the average weather of a place. Meteorologists observe, collect, and record weather data every day over many years. They use this data to give us the climate of a particular place. What do you know about global warming? Discuss the possible impacts of climate change on our Earth.
Excellent. So now this instruction module ended with a question that's a really nice lead in to a great project-based lesson or activity. So let's take a look at, this is a project-based lesson plan from pbs.org, and you will receive this. 9/5 and add 32. Thank you, Glenna. I love it. When you don't answer the question for the students, you let them percolate and let them do the research and come up with the answer. Thank you so much for that. So project-based lesson plan on global warming. Now I will have a little disclaimer that some of the links don't work for the research areas where it sends students, but it really gives a beautiful framework on, you know, the different components, what to do, how to guide the students with getting their research completed, and not just researching the facts, but also looking at the controversy of the topic and what people are saying who do not believe in global warming, because it's so important to understand that to put together a scientific argument. So thank you, Devanshi. Everyone will be receiving an email with all the resources and the PowerPoint. Okay, and so this allows students to be a scientist. It allows them to research, to observe, to collect, and then report out their findings. So students are actually becoming scientists. And we know that there have been lots of articles in the news. I mean, all the dangerous storms and the flooding and the fires and the drought conditions are a result of our climate is changing. You know, now what the reason and the causes for it, it's a lot of different reasons, but we do know that climate is changing and it is making hurricanes stronger, according to the research, and how it can be impacting storms over Earth's tropical oceans. And this is a NASA article and a New York Times article as well. So what are some possible solutions? Students now become problem solvers. So we ask them to look for different resources. And here is a really nice little film of a miracle plant. And this came from PBS.
Hi, my name is Samantha Reinders, and I'm a photojournalist based in South Africa. I live in the small town of Prince Albert in the semi-desert area of the Karoo. The Karoo is famous for many, many things, but I'm here today to tell you specifically about one of them. And it's this resilient little green-grey shrub that is indigenous to the entire country, but really common in these parts. It's called speckworm, here it is here, or Portulacaria afra. In Afrikaans, which is spoken in these parts, it translates literally into bacon bush, which is ridiculous because it has nothing to do with bacon at all. What is amazing about this plant, though, is that it has become the charismatic ambassador for an entire social media phenomenon. And many people believe it to be able to fight climate change like a heavyweight boxer. Speckworm is the king of carbon sequestration. Carbon sequestration is when carbon is captured out of the atmosphere and stored. In optimal conditions, 1 hectare of speckworm can sequester 4 to 10 tons of carbon a year. And compared to other succulents, it grows quickly and in mass, and even in times of drought. Besides all of its so-called miracle properties, it's also just a pretty plant and hardy. And for someone like myself who doesn't have very green fingers, it's easy to grow. This little cutting has been in water for a while, so you see it's even got a little bit of a root. So I'm going to plant this one right now. But you don't have to root them beforehand. You can just actually chop a big piece off a much bigger plant. And plop it in some soil. It's really that easy. Sandy soil does the best job. Plop it in. Speckworm plants are good for big pots, small pots on sunny porches, so it can grow inside or on a patio outside in the garden. And they make for really, really good bonsais as well. They really are kind of a jack of all trades. All they need every now and again is a little bit of water. Elephants love to eat the stuff. They can eat up to kilograms of it in a day. Black rhinos also love it. Now, I don't have any of those guys on my farm, but I do have a bunch of Angora goats. And they love to eat some speckworm. Here we have a hungry guy. Would you like some, sir? There we go. Speckworm makes a beautiful flower in spring and summer if the rains have been good. And that also brings loads of insects, especially bees. And the bees bring the birds. So everyone likes a little bit of speckworm. The good news is that it's not just animals that can eat speckworm. It's pretty tasty for humans too, and good to boot. It is packed full of vitamin C, as well as manganese, magnesium, and cobalt. And it contains microelements, iodine and selenium, which act as antioxidants. It's got like a slightly lemony, tangy taste. And you can eat it straight off the bush, pretty tarty. It's perfect if you're doing a long, hot hike through the Karoo. It's great for dehydration. It's great, it'll help with exhaustion or heat stroke, any of those things. But don't be surprised if you see it on a Michelin star menu either. It is all the rage in Cape Town restaurants at the moment. It is great in stews, it's great in salads. But I'm not gonna lie, I have a sweet tooth, and this over here is speckworm ice cream.
Okay, so there was a question that popped in that do I get the project-based lessons? Is that correct? And then build it in EduSmart? Well, actually, the project-based, it's not anything set in stone how to do it. It's just basically the students researching, collecting data, trying to answer a question and then presenting their project. There are some project-based lessons already framed to give teachers a jump start. And so what I did was I compiled all my resources into EduSmart, and I used my EduSmart resources or content that's already in the platform, and I use that for my direct instruction. So did that help to clarify that question?
Yes, that's because I had seen that you put that one thing, you'd gotten a couple different things from different resources. So I just wasn't sure if I already had the foundation and this is to get it out to my kids. So,
yes. So the beauty with EduSmart is I can also build my entire lesson plan delivery in one place. Okay. Now, student, go ahead.
I'm a GT teacher for our district, and I don't have access to EduSmart. So I'm trying to see if we can get it for the GT teachers, because we do capstone projects and project-based learning, and so I like this format, but our other teachers have it.
Excellent. Okay, and I know that we have some resource personnel available at the end of the presentation. So
yes, if you could leave your email in the chat, and we will reach out to you and help you with all of that. Thank you.
So the bottom line is that students not only can research and find answers for themselves for you to meet your classroom needs, but they can also contribute to the global collection of science data. So I'm going to show you a couple of places that have a lot of project-based lessons and activities available. So in keeping with my theme with climate change, because we're studying about global warming, we're studying about the difference between climate and weather, there is a global environmental topics collaboration site. And students can go there, and this is open from pre-K, because this is from ages 3 to 21, where they can collaborate on environmental topics, and they will explore causes and effects of climate change and have the opportunity to develop solutions to take action. Because it's more than just collecting information. Students need to connect with science because they know that they can act on what they have learned. Right? Anytime that they can immediately take action on what they are learning, it makes it more meaningful for them, and it will stay with them long term. And another resource that we have is the Earth Echo Water Challenge, and my students in Miami-Dade have participated in this, and it's with Philippe Cousteau of the famous Cousteau family. He is an environmentalist and an activist. And so this is one of his challenges. It's grades 6 through 12. You can see it addresses physical science, earth and space science, and it's very simple. It's a 15-minute project where the students collect the temperature, the pH, the turbidity, and dissolved oxygen, and they simply enter it in an Excel file that goes into a global database. But it's more than just doing the collection. It's then, what are they going to do? How are they going to analyze the data that's being presented that will turn it into a project-based learning activity? Thank you, Heather. Thank you for joining us. And one of the last resources is the Citizen Science Projects, where the Global Water Sampling Project is a part of this as well. And this goes through a wealth of other projects that students can become involved in and become citizen scientists. And the reason they're citizen scientists is because they are contributing their data to the pool of scientific discoveries. So what are some of your students' favorite standards-aligned projects that you have done in your classrooms? And we are going to share with you a Google Doc that you could enter some of your project-based learning experiences, and so that we will have a collection from people on this call, in addition to some of the resources that we will be sharing with you at the end of this webinar. Is there a way to share the Google Doc? Let me see if.
Do you want me to share the Google Doc on my screen?
Yes, to see what is being entered.
Certainly. Can you see it?
I can. And we see a few people have entered, and they're hopefully going to start putting in their recommendations. So again, this is just a brainstorming moment where projects that you have done, that you have found that the students are excited about doing it, that you've had success, whether it's an actual PBL. So this is just what you have done with your students. So animal enrichment, building devices for animals at the Austin Zoo. To keep them entertained. Oh, very nice. Because even animals get bored. So the websites above are the 3 websites that I just shared with you, just that you would have, you know, what was presented in the actual presentation. So a book on specific animal research with ecosystem and habitat information. Oh, they've developed movies as a project-based activity. So you could, students love to do movies. Research a movie with 5 or more sequels. So these are science movies, science fiction movies, and then what are the science facts that were part of them? I love doing that with Star Trek, and especially Star Trek, because so much of what we use today, they were doing it in the Star Trek films from, when is that, back in the 60s? So research a movie with 5 or more sequels and collect the box office data. Change the prices for inflation. And graph data. I love this math connection. And see if they should make another sequel. Cells with each student's focusing on specific organelles. And then you could tie that into all the genetic engineering that is occurring, you know, with our foods and even with people. An Ian Bird project. Okay, the GT students complete projects from texaspsp.org. I can see how EduSmart will easily enrich any of the projects at this website. Well, thank you. Alrighty, and then I am now going to turn it over to Lisa, who also gathered a lot of resources for you that you will be getting from Devanshi after this session.
So it might be easier for you, Devanshi, to pull up a resource list. Okay. So here are the websites that Dr. Rosales shared with you, and also some hurricane information. Looks like it's specifically related to Florida on one of them. And then I added some resources on if you needed some research, the effectiveness of project-based learning. So I have two research articles, and then the link for PBL Works, that Buck Institute for Education. These are the heavy hitters for PBL. And so if you're new to PBL, this is where you need to go to find more than you would ever want to know about PBL. And I also put a link right to science project ideas. And then just some other generic links to more PBL. If you can go to the next page so I can remember what's on there. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are more just student examples. Also another link for citizen science resources. And then I found a really good podcast, if you like to listen to podcasts in the car while you're driving to school, that this may be one that is super helpful for you. I also have a project overview on this idea of looking at storms and looking at weather events. Devanshi's pulling it up. There we go. Nope, not that one.
So this is the lesson plan that was,
right.
This is the lesson plan that was in the presentation that takes you through the global warming.
It's the other PDF that's in the folder.
Yes. Pulling it up.
There it is. So I don't know if you can see the tiny print, but you will be getting a digital copy of this. Whoa, there we go. And what this is it's a workshop I did on PBL in a previous job where we looked at weather events. And the big idea was to look at what happened here in Houston and Hurricane Harvey and try to drive some student learning from that experience. So geared toward middle school, I tried to include all kinds of subject areas. So it gave you something you could go to your ELA teacher or your math teacher with. And with the scroll back up just a little bit for the content topic. Sorry, Devanshi. And the idea behind, no, a little bit lower, I probably should have shared my screen where it says content topics, that every group or every student doesn't have to do the same PBL, that you can give them the same driving question and they can come up with different ways of looking at the problem. So you can look at the effect of climate change and increasing temperatures and hurricanes. You can look at what happens to the groundwater and surface water after a hurricane. We have a lot of chemical plants here in Houston that had some catastrophic events during hurricanes. And so what is that doing long-term to our water supply? Or some other of the abiotic environmental factors? What happens after a flood to something like this? What happens to biodiversity? How does bacteria spread? Because sewage plants break down after a flood. So you have this idea that you can go beyond one tiny content area and they can add to their project as you teach more content as the years go on. So I also listed some science and engineering practices under this, as well as things that you could go to a math teacher or an ELA teacher or even an art teacher with ideas for, here's how we could work together to do a very long-term PBL. So I'm going to turn it back over to Ava. Like I said, we'll share this with you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. So you have a wealth of resources available for you. The main point is that the students are thinking like a scientist, they are questioning, and then they're trying to find answers to those questions based on the standards and the content that you are teaching them. So in alignment, I know Lisa was talking about the Texas hurricane. Those first two links on the resource are from FIU, which has, NOAA is down in South Florida, and we have one of the research centers for hurricanes at Florida International University. So those are two links to a lot of resources as well that cover in general hurricanes. And we have the only, it recreates the hurricane force winds. So we actually have that facility on the FIU engineering campus. So I now open up for questions and answers. For anything that needs clarification or anything that we did not address that you
I have
an
a question.
expectation.
Hi, Dr.
Go ahead.
Rosales. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm sorry. Can you when you send out the informational sheet, can you highlight the one that the other lady was saying was the heavy hitter in PBO?
So if we share the resource link,
right? Which one was that?
Go back to that one.
On the
Right here, PBL Works. It's from the Buck Institute for Education. It's just pblworks.org, and that will take you to, like I said, they're the heavy hitter for PBL.
Yeah. Do you know if they have anything on evolution in there?
I'm not familiar with every project that is in there.
Okay.
But if you need resources, what grade level do you teach? Because that helps me. 8th grade. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if they have a PBL in there on evolution for middle school, but send me an email or drop your email in the chat, and I will hook you up with something that can help you. I'm a former biology teacher, so
I'm teaching biology and
oh, okay. Well, there's probably a lot of stuff in Biointeractive from Howard Hughes Medical Institute, that biointeractive.org. If you're teaching high school biology in 8th grade, that's where I would go. They'll have problem-based things in there, like what's, about elephant poaching or there'll be something on evolution in there. But I'm happy to go look and direct you to something if you don't want to go look yourself.
No, I can go.
Okay, fine. But that's where I would go look immediately, is to Biointeractive. It's just biointeractive.org.
All right,
it's wonderful. Yeah.
Okay.
We have time for, I think, 1 or 2 more questions. Do we have any other questions? Before we run out of time, Ava was kind enough to put all of our contact information at the end of her slide deck. So you have all of our contact information. So if you weren't able to get your question in, or you would like to discuss what Dr. Rosales has shared in more detail with her, or follow up with Lisa on the resources that she's shared, you have their contact information on their screen. Additionally, early next week, you all will be receiving a copy of this recording, copies of all the resources that were shared today, as well as a copy of Dr. Rosales' slide decks with all of these links, informations, and videos on them. So we are out of time right now. Okay. Dr. Rosales, oh yes, sorry.
I wanted to jump in just to let people here from Texas know that we have a whole slate of professional development that's going to be available at CAST. So you need to stop by and see what we're going to be offering. We run the range from stuff from K2 all the way through high school. So
yes, Thank you, Lisa. Gold star for you there. Completely forgot to mention that. Yes. And Lisa will be presenting there. So if you want to get an autograph from this star, that would be the place to do it.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yes.
Is it virtual? Is CAS going to be virtual or face-to-face?
CAS is not going to be virtual. It's going to be face-to-face. It's going to be in Fort Worth.
Thank you.
Sure.
Wonderful. Well, so again, look forward to an email from me early next week. Otherwise, I thank you all for joining us today. Dr. Rosales, do you have any closing words for us?
No, I just want to thank you and keep students questioning. Once they're engaged, we know that students love science. They just don't know it yet.
I love it. Thank you, everybody. Hope you have a wonderful Wednesday evening, and we will catch you all soon. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank